Now to the moon and beyond with Space Age.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see by your in-flight monitor, we have begun our final approach to Luna City. As we re-enter gravity, please fasten your seatbelts and stow any free-floating objects in the storage bin beneath your seat. If this is your first visit, you may not know that Luna City recently won the Earth Council's Recycling Award for air and water quality. You'll breathe easier here than in most terrestrial cities. During your stay, take a spin around our rover racecourse and don't miss a visit to Tranquility Base Museum. You can still see Neil Armstrong's footprints near the original lunar module. Those of you in the left cabin must be enjoying the view of planet Earth. Local time is 10 hours past lunar dawn. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the moon.
Have you ever wanted to pull up stakes and move to a faraway land? You're not alone. I'm Patrick Stewart. Some 500 years ago, a stream of humanity began its flight from Europe towards the shores of an uncharted new world. And centuries later, the promise of gold led to the rallying cry, "Go west, young man," and go west they did by the thousands to settle the American frontier. In July of 1969, a new frontier was opened. To a growing number of would-be explorers, the moon represents the latest land of opportunity for human expansion and settlement. There's gold in those lunar hills, clues to the origins of our Earth and solar system, and maybe enough resources for Earth's first extraterrestrial colony. Enough to justify a return to the moon and beyond. Tradition once held that test pilots made the best astronauts. In 1972, NASA broke with tradition and sent a trained scientist into space, geologist Harrison Schmitt, better known as Jack. On December 11th, he and Commander Eugene Cernan would navigate the spacecraft Challenger to the surface of the moon.
Stand by for pitch over. Oh, are we coming in? Pitch there it is. Proceeded. And there it is, Houston. There's Camelot. Wide off target. I see it. We got them all. 42 degrees, 37 degrees, to 5,500. Stand by for some dust. Little forward, G. Little forward a little. 90 feet. Little forward velocity. 80 feet. Going down at 3. A little dust. Going down about 2. Very little dust. Very little dust. 40 feet. Going down at 3. Stand by for touchdown. Stand by. 25 feet. Down at 2. Feels good. 20 feet. Going down at 2. 10 feet. Contact. A push. Engine stop. Okay, Houston, the Challenger has landed.
Roger, Challenger, that's super.
Houston, you can tell America that Challenger is at Taurus Littrow.
The Valley of Taurus Littrow was literally a geologist's paradise, and that phrase popped out as when I had my first chance to look out the right-hand window of the lunar module Challenger and see this magnificent valley we had landed in. We had an impression of what it was going to be like from the photographs and the simulations that had been done based on those photographs. But to actually see the brilliantly illuminated slopes in this deep valley, deeper than the Grand Canyon, in fact, the mountains on either side went up to 7,000 feet. A blacker than black sky, brilliant sun illuminating this valley, as brilliant as any New Mexico sun one can imagine. That whole feeling and the three dimensions that one could see really resulted in me thinking this is going to be fun, and it was.
I was strolling on the moon one day in the merry, merry month of December. No, May's a month. May, that's right.
The goal of the Apollo 17 mission was to explore a valley carved out by a huge meteorite impact over 3.5 billion years ago.
Too bad I don't have my skis. Man, I covered ground.
Schmidt and Cernan covered more territory, collected more moon rocks, and spent more hours on the lunar surface than any previous Apollo mission.
Gravity.
Copy the mark. Copy the mark.
Okay.
It's the old boulder rolling trick.
How about getting a soil sample under there?
Don't hit the rover.
3 days of hard work and the occasional frustration.
No. Dadgummit.
Jack Schmidt having a few problems.
Cernan and Schmidt were the 11th and 12th humans on the moon. They were also the last. Before they left, Cernan commemorated the fact.
We'd like to uncover a plaque that has been on the leg of our spacecraft that we have climbed down many times over the last 3 days. And I'll read what that plaque says to you. Spearman completed his first exploration of the moon, December 1972 AD. May the spirit of peace in which we came be reflected in the lives of all mankind.
A remote-controlled television camera left on the surface recorded their departure on December 14, 1972. They left behind a moon littered with the remains of the Apollo program, footprints that will last 1 million years in the unchanging environment. The descent stages of 6 lunar modules, 3 moon rovers, 2 golf balls, a hammer, a falcon feather, half a dozen American flags. A network of scientific instruments powered by small nuclear generators once sent streams of data back to Earth until the system was shut down for lack of funding. Both America and Russia sent robotic spacecraft here. Some crash-landed, spraying the ground with electronic debris. And in one poetic gesture, hundreds of small, red Soviet stars. Today, the moon is quiet. No one has ever been back. 36 stories high, capable of 7.5 million pounds of thrust, the Saturn V is the most powerful rocket ever to launch humans into space. Never once did it fail. For Paul Spudis, the Saturn V represents the end of an era.
This is an incredible machine. It lies on the grass here in the hot Texas sun when it should be at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And the reason it isn't is because the last 3 flights to the moon were canceled. I have great pride in the fact that we could once do this. We could once build a machine that could hurl people and machines at the moon. But at the same time, I'm depressed because we're not doing that. Space is big. It's forward-looking. It's future-oriented. It's visionary. It excites people. It excites children. I mean, that's why I got into the business, is because I saw people going to the moon and I saw people flying in space, and I wanted to do that.
A geologist at the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston, Texas, Spudis is part of what has been referred to as the lunar underground. A growing number of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs share a conviction that a return to the moon should be part of any space program.
There are 4 things that you can do on the moon. You can study the moon as a natural laboratory to understand planetary processes and to study the moon's own history. You can use the moon as a platform to look at the universe around us. You can use the materials and energy, the resources of the moon, both in space and possibly to import to the Earth. And finally, you can live on the moon. You can understand what it takes for humanity to live off-planet.
The moon is the size of the continent of Africa. The moon is an entirely new continent, an 8th continent, that the United States and other people in the industrialized world who wish to do so can make our own.
If space is going to benefit us, it's surely going to be near Earth space. The moon's in Earth's orbit. It's always handy. Means trip times are short. Means it's somewhat safer than going to things that are farther away. It means that we can get more people there and back in a shorter time.
It's a stepping stone to the rest of the solar system. If we want to go to Mars eventually and explore our solar system, we've got to learn how to live and work in an alien, hostile environment.
I see going to the moon as inevitable, and the only problem is whether it will be in my lifetime or in this century or by this country.
No longer is the moon merely a political pawn between 2 superpowers. Today, Japan's interest in a return to the moon is strictly business. Plans for a 21st century lunar base are underway in Tokyo at Shimizu Corporation, the largest construction company in the world. Shimizu executives anticipate rewarding new markets in the development of space. They are banking on the future.
At first, few people will go back to the moon to learn how to cope with the harsh conditions, to understand what kind of manufacturing will be possible. In the long run, we must learn to use local materials, so it may take some time, but eventually many people will be living on the moon.